Was De Bruyne's replacement there all along? Is it Phil Foden? Is he the next coming of whatever deity you like to enjoy? Phil Foden is on fire. Scored a hat-trick against Brentford. Everyone thinks he's amazing. Nubaid, you hate him. Tell us why.
No. Taken out of context. I think the Brentford game, was classic. He scored 3 goals, didn't actually play that well, and the narrative straight after is he's the height of De Bruyne's throne. You got to understand the level Kevin De Bruyne performs at every single game he's available versus the level Foden performs at every single game he's available. And so therefore I don't hate Foden. There is just context, and that is why we're having this conversation.
Well, let's give you some context. So Foden's stats this season: 8 goals, joint second in City's squad, 7 assists from an XG of 5.4. Those 8 goals, 4.53 shot creating actions. KDB's lowest average in the last 6 seasons is 6.2, which I think is an interesting point. We can come to that. 46 total key passes, and of course he's been in the side. He's so different to De Bruyne. In terms of the sort of the overhype with Foden, let's see if we can get to the sort of truth of this. Do you think there's something in, obviously, we talk about football, everyone talks about football everywhere. Is there something in the idea that because we've all gone, he's generational, which I hate that word, generational. I don't even know what it means. But because he's generational, people are going, come on, we need to see it now, And he's at an age where we need to see it now. Has he actually, or has he gone to a new level?
It's a hard one because I don't think he'd have hit the heights that he has under any other manager. I think under Pep Guardiola, it's been almost a perfect marriage. But at the same time, there's something that keeps screaming in the back of my head that says, well, if he's that good, why doesn't he start every single game? Why isn't the team built around him in the way it's built around De Bruyne when he's fit? Why isn't it built around him in the way that, Bernardo Silva's utilised? Why has none of that happened? So it makes me think, what is it about Phil Foden that Pep Guardiola maybe doesn't like? Because if he really trusted him in fully, he would do something different with him. But he is super talented, and I just think he is not your typical British footballer. I think that the technical level he shows and the way he plays the game, you almost feel like he'd fit into the Spanish national side. And as a result of that, we're looking at him and he's a bit of an outlier. He's different to everybody else. And maybe that leads to a bit of overhype, but I think he's a superb player.
Do you think that if he had the career path of James Maddison, he's at Leicester and he's the guy, give him the ball, do your thing, and again, so now at Tottenham or any other team, I think at Man City, because of the positional play, you're part of a sort of a bigger being. Do you think for someone who has such great dribbling ability, and sort of coming back to that KDB replacement idea and those shot creating actions, 4.53 and KDB's lowest average is 6.22. The thing I would throw in the face of that stat, if you're suggesting that Foden can't get to those levels, is that he's not a passer like De Bruyne is. Look at that headed goal against Brentford. It's that beautiful cross that De Bruyne does time and again, which feels like an obvious tactic, but only so many people seem to be able to do it, and De Bruyne seems to do it time and time and again. So in terms of him finding his place as the key man for Man City, do you think that his style of play has hurt him a little bit in terms of being someone who's not an out-and-out winger, but is a bit of a dribbler, isn't just a passer? Do you know what I mean?
I think, but that's kind of where it comes to Harry's point. I think, if you are this incredible footballer that we all believe that you are, there has been times, and people will say, and I think the counter-argument always is that Man City have such a big squad and so many of the players. Bernardo Silva, when De Bruyne is out and everyone else is out, he becomes, Pep's like, please save me. Gundogan, you please. Mahrez, he's never done that with Foden. He didn't even do it in this period, by the way. He was very reluctant to play him through the middle. He played Alvarez through the middle for a little while. And eventually, I think his hand was forced because of injuries. And I think, so I do kind of agree, whereby I go, his skill set maybe doesn't suit this team because this team and this ecosystem is a bit more rigid and they're not asking him to,
And would he slow it down a little bit?
Well, if you bring Jack Grealish into the conversation, right? Think about the Jack Grealish we saw at Aston Villa. Bit of a maverick, picks up the ball, carries it, all the rest of it. And then we saw him go to City, struggle at the beginning, and then eventually have to adapt his game to fit into the Pep Guardiola way. And it almost feels like Phil Foden isn't going to change his style of play, isn't going to say, nope, I'm going to stop doing the things that I do best, in the way that Jack Grealish did to a point. To allow Pep Guardiola to then put him in every week. I don't know. It's an interesting one.
So in terms of him having that starting spot, he's been very versatile in terms of playing through the middle, playing on the left, playing on the right. Where do you see him playing moving forward? And do you see him replacing De Bruyne in time? Or do you think there'll be others that kind of become the guy? Because I think De Bruyne's still the guy, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think De Bruyne will stay the guy as long as he's at Man City. Even if he plays 10 games a season, he's still the guy. I think to replace De Bruyne, I think Foden's intangibles have to improve. So that cross that De Bruyne did for the Foden goal, like, everyone knows it's going to happen. You cannot stop that from happening. You when you give the ball to Foden, I think you go, what are you going to, like, what is your thing? You know, like, we talk about players and cheat codes, for example. You go like Salah against Arsenal. You know what's happening. You cannot stop it. You talk about Saka typically week after week. You can't stop it. De Bruyne, Haaland. Can Foden find whatever his thing is and go, that's what I think makes the elite players in the elite sides. But to be fair, I've got his stats up here, and progressively I think he is being trusted more. He started 20 games this season, started 22 last season. There's still a long way to go. So I think, yes, he could be the guy to replace De Bruyne, but you'd need a style shift.
I think there could be something in what we saw in the game against Brentford where and it could be the end of Jack Grealish in terms of what we saw, because I wonder, Doku's going to be important, I think, in this run-in. And I think what Guardiola often does is he kind of he has a look at the start of the season and he goes, right, well, where do I want to be in March? And I feel like he wants Foden centrally. And I think one thing that was almost a weakness for Man City, I thought, was when there was such a sort of desire to get the ball to Doku that it then makes you a touch predictable. And so if you're playing that way, but also having someone wide on the other side, which is a huge principle of Man City and positional play and how Pep Guardiola's teams work. We've all seen that Thierry Henry story where he stays wide. I wonder if there's something where, because all eyeballs are on Jeremy Doku, you might have one wide player and then that left-sided player, certainly with the ball, going massively against the sort of positionalism of Pep, could be a Foden who then comes and plays in a more central area all the time. Because I think the best Foden for me is in a central area, because he's got that outrageous zip, but he's not got that that out and out put the ball go sort of speed that you see from a winger. So I think that could be what we see, where you almost have sort of just the one winger, and otherwise it's very congested, because what we're seeing time and again is such a desire to control the centre of the pitch, especially when you lose the ball. And I feel like, say Doku's got the ball and it slows everyone down, and he, even if he doesn't get to the byline, he puts it back to De Bruyne. What Pep would then want is bodies in the box. And I think to find a way to get Foden and Alvarez and Haaland all in the box, I think, and have Bernardo Silva, I think it's at that left side that you might lose someone.
I think we get caught up in positions too much. Like your starting position.
Could you tell me that before I
can be,
start?
No.
Like, you waiting for you to land.
It's to back up your point. Like,
right.
I think we put a lot of emphasis on positions, and your starting position is very different sometimes to the position that you're expected to get into to then do your damage, right? So Foden could be someone that's put in a wide space from the beginning of an attack in the build-up, and then drift infield and come inside and be that extra man, because when you ghost into those areas, you're much harder to pick up than if you start in that position and you're constantly in the centre halves or defensive midfielders' eye line. So I think there's a lot of validity to what you were saying.
And they've lost a ghost in Gundogan.
Yeah.
Like they're low on ghosts.
Yeah. I'm going to get emotional about Gundogan. What I was going to say is, though, I think if they get a fullback in the Alphonso Davies Frimpong type profile, that'll probably lead them to play exactly that way, because then you have your guys narrow, but you have these fullbacks that can play as wingers, that can play as left backs and play as left wing backs, all in one. Frimpong being one of those, because in the Brentford game, Josko Gvardiol was playing more like a hybrid left midfield, left winger than he was a left back. And even in transition, they were asking Ake to come and sweep over. So I found that quite interesting. But I said it before we started, I think he sat on this near the start of the season and went, we're going to release when the time comes. Because there's no way you just drop these guys on the pitch.
Spanish accent.
I don't know what accent that was. I just think, like, you can't just drop these guys together and go, boom, we got it. I just don't think it happens that way.